In the rugged and relentless Wild West, where dust storms howled and peril lay, in wait around every corner, keeping clean was a perpetual challenge. Yet inventive pioneers devised clever ways to maintain hygiene in this unforgiving environment. Join us as we uncover the untangling hygiene practices of the Wild West. Let's get into it. The first one on the list is Saturday night baths, a family affair. In the Wild West, the notion of a daily shower was as unusual as a vegetarian eating steak. With water being scarce and indoor plumbing a luxury for the wealthy, most families adhered to a weekly ritual known as the Saturday night bath. A large metal tub was filled with hot water from the stove and placed in the kitchen or living room. Family members took turns bathing, starting with the oldest and ending with the youngest. If you were lucky enough to go first, you might enjoy a few moments of clean water before it turned murky and lukewarm. Often, these Saturday night baths became a family event. Siblings splashed and played in the tub, while parents ensured everyone was properly washed. This was a time for family bonding and relaxation, offering a brief respite from the hard work and grime of frontier life. However, by the time the last person got in, the water was far from clean, usually a murky gray with floating dirt and debris. Despite this, a bit of grime was a small price to pay for the luxury of a weekly bath in a world where water was precious and time was limited. The next one is the deadly scratch, how minor injuries could turn fatal. In the perilous Wild West, danger was ever present. Gunslingers, outlaws, and wild animals were constant threats. Yet one of the most significant dangers was the deadly scratch. In an era before antibiotics and modern medicine, even minor injuries could become life-threatening. A small cut or scrape could easily become infected, leading to a slow, painful death. In towns like Deadwood, South Dakota, violence, vice, and disease were rampant. The tiny, invisible bacteria thriving in every cut and scrape were among the most dreaded threats. Without antiseptics or sterilization methods, doctors and healers were often powerless to prevent infections. A simple nick from a razor or a splinter from a boardwalk could quickly escalate into severe sepsis, leaving the victim in excruciating pain. In the dusty, unsanitary conditions of the Wild West, keeping wounds clean was easier said than done. Many pioneers met their end from something as seemingly minor as an infected blister or a festering scratch. Moving forward to remarkable medicines of the Wild West, from cocaine to aspirin. In the Wild West, the saying, "Desperate times call for desperate measures," held true. With few trained doctors and even fewer reliable remedies, frontier folks had to get creative with their treatments. For toothaches, a couple of Advil might suffice today, but back then, the remedy was more unconventional. Imagine a cowboy in pain, reaching for a small vial of cocaine. Yes, cocaine. In the 1800s, cocaine was considered a miracle cure for everything from headaches to heartaches. For tooth pain, a few drops on the gums were believed to numb the suffering. When cocaine was unavailable, whiskey often stepped in. This potent drink, which fueled many barroom brawls, also served as a rough pain reliever. Got a bullet wound? Take a swig of whiskey. Broke a leg? Whiskey to the rescue. It might not have been medically sound, but in an era without antibiotics or anesthesia, a bit of liquid courage went a long way. Perhaps the most surprising Wild West remedy was aspirin, which we still use today. Synthesized from willow bark by German chemist Felix Hoffmann in the late 1800s, aspirin quickly became a reliable staple in frontier medicine cabinets. Next on the list we have the Wild West bed, a haven for bugs and straw. When you think of a cozy bed, plush mattresses and soft sheets come to mind. In the Wild West, however, beds were little more than piles of straw and hay stuffed into cloth sacks. If you were lucky, you might have a rough wool blanket, but usually you'd be sleeping directly on a scratchy, prickly surface. These primitive mattresses were havens for bugs and vermin, from fleas and bed bugs to mice and rats. Waking up with bites and welts was common, and the constant rustling of the straw, coupled with the scurrying of tiny feet, made it even more unsettling. Perhaps the most distressing aspect was that these beds were rarely cleaned or replaced. The same straw and hay would be used for months or even years, accumulating sweat, dirt, and animal droppings. It's no wonder many cowboys preferred sleeping under the stars to avoid a bug-infested night's rest. Now let's talk about the outhouse, a smelly sanctuary. In the rugged frontier of the Wild West, where modern plumbing could only be imagined, outhouses were the norm. These basic structures, often little more than ramshackle wooden sheds, served as the communal restrooms for cowboys, settlers and outlaws alike. Suspended precariously over deep pits in the ground, outhouses epitomize Wild West sanitation, or rather the lack of it. Inside their weather-beaten walls, a potent mix of odors awaited, strong enough to make even the hardiest cowboy cringe. The smell of human waste combined with the musty scent of rotting wood and the sharp tang of urine, creating an aroma that could challenge even the most resilient of noses. But the stench wasn't the only thing that made you want to hold your breath. These outhouses were also a haven for a host of creepy crawlies. Flies buzzed around your head, while spiders and other bugs scurried across the walls and floor. It was like a tiny ecosystem of filth, where the only rule seemed to be survival of the foulest. Despite their many flaws, outhouses were an essential part of life in the Wild West. They provided a bit of privacy in a world where personal space was as scarce as water in the desert. And when nature called, they were the only option available. Next up, we have seam squirrels, the lice of the Wild West. In the rugged Wild West, hygiene often took a backseat to survival, and this was evident in the scourge of the seam squirrel, a tiny, persistent pest that tormented cowboys and pioneers alike. Seam squirrels, despite their cute name, were actually body lice that nested in the seams and folds of clothing, feeding on the blood and skin of their hosts. Regular washing and changing of clothes were luxuries few could afford, making cowboys who wore the same clothes for weeks especially prone to infestations. These lice were more than just a nuisance. They spread serious diseases like typhus and trench fever. Desperate pioneers resorted to drastic measures to rid themselves of these pests, including burning infested clothing, shaving their heads, and using harsh chemicals like vinegar and kerosene, which often resulted in painful rashes and burns. Moving on to another surprising Wild West trick, which is Lysol, the unexpected solution for personal hygiene. In the Wild West, women faced distinct challenges with personal hygiene. Limited access to clean water and a lack of suitable feminine hygiene products led to inventive solutions. One surprising and dangerous solution was Lysol. The same disinfectant spray we use today to clean bathrooms and kill germs was once used by Wild West women as a personal hygiene product. They diluted the liquid and used it as a douche, believing it could prevent infections and serve as birth control. Unfortunately, Lysol contained harmful chemicals like cresol and phenol, causing severe burns, irritation, and damage to reproductive organs. In an era when women's health was overlooked, Lysol was marketed as a miracle cure for feminine hygiene issues. Advertisements promised to daintily cleanse and maintain a woman's confidence in her charm, but the reality was far from charming. Women experienced painful infections, scarring, and even infertility. It wasn't until the 1960s that Lysol was banned as a feminine hygiene product, thanks to women's health advocates and medical professionals who recognized the dangers. Next up, the surprising truth about infrequent showers in the Wild West. When you think of the Wild West, you might picture gunfights, tumbleweeds, and smelly, unwashed cowboys. Surprisingly, that last image is quite accurate. People in the Wild West had unusual beliefs about personal hygiene. Showers were seen as potentially harmful. Many thought that frequent bathing with hot water and steam could open their pores to germs and diseases. Moreover, clean water was rare. In many areas, water had to be hauled from great distances and was often murky and contaminated. With real dangers like dysentery and cholera, using precious water for a bath was impractical. Bathing frequency varied. Some accounts suggest that a full bath was a rare event, happening once or twice a year. Others indicate that a weekly sponge bath, involving a basin of water and a rag, was more common. However, many cowboys and frontiersmen went months without a thorough wash, relying on a quick dip in a river or a splash of water from a canteen. Now moving on to the Wild West toilet paper predicament. In the Wild West, responding to nature's call was far from simple. Without the comfort of soft, quilted toilet paper, pioneers had to be resourceful with their post-outhouse cleanup, often resorting to less than glamorous solutions. Corn cobs were a popular choice. After enjoying sweet corn for dinner, pioneers would repurpose the leftover cobs as makeshift toilet paper, a true example of recycling. When corn cobs weren't available, they turned to old magazines or catalogs, tearing out pages to use the rough, inky paper for cleaning. In desperate situations, they might even use leaves, grass, or any natural material they could find. It wasn't until 1857 that Joseph Gaiety introduced the first commercially available toilet paper. However, it differed significantly from today's cushy rolls. Gaiety's paper came in individual sheets, medicated with aloe, and infused with a pleasant scent. At 50 cents for a pack of 5 sheets, it was a luxury that few could afford. And the last one on our list is hair care in the Wild West: lard, whiskey, and pencils. In the Wild West, hair care was as rugged and inventive as the frontier itself. Forget about modern shampoos, conditioners, and styling tools. People of the Old West had to make do with whatever they could find. One of the most common shampoos was a scentless mixture made from lard and lye. That's right, the same ingredients used for soap and to grease up a cast iron skillet. These soap bars were as effective as they were harsh, removing dirt and grime from hair, but leaving it as dry as a tumbleweed in the desert. The pioneers of the Wild West didn't stop there. They also turned to an unconventional hair care ingredient: whiskey. Yes, the same drink that fueled countless barroom brawls was believed to be a miracle tonic for hair. Mixed with a splash of castor oil, this potent concoction was thought to cleanse the scalp, encourage hair growth, and add a bit of shine to those wild locks. When it came to styling, Wild West folks didn't have the luxury of electric curling irons or high-tech straighteners. Instead, they relied on a more basic tool: the humble pencil. Women would heat pencils over a flame until they were hot enough to curl their hair, creating a look that was part schoolmarm, part saloon girl. But the most surprising hair care ingredient? Good old-fashioned dirt. Some pioneers believed that a little dirt and grease in the hair was a sign of good health. They thought that overly clean hair might indicate illness or weakness. Talk about a different approach to hygiene. From unconventional hygiene practices to surprising remedies, the Wild West was a realm of creativity and resilience. Thanks for exploring these fascinating facets of frontier life with us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more historical insights.